They told us the war ended in 1945, that the evil was defeated, the secrets buried. But hidden beneath rubble, locked behind redacted files, and whispered through classified channels, 5 forbidden operations remained untouched. Experiments in madness, worship cloaked as science, and disappearances no one ever explained. This is not the history you learned in school. These are the stories they erased, and for good reason. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. In the shadow of Operation Barbarossa, as Hitler prepared to invade the Soviet Union, a covert Nazi expedition returned to Berlin with something far more dangerous than enemy intelligence. Its official designation was Sonderkommando Ahnenerbe 77, a black-budget unit under Heinrich Himmler's SS Empire. Its purpose: to unearth and recover ancient technologies and symbols tied to Aryan mythology. In early 1941, they surfaced from a forgotten Hellenic island in the Aegean Sea, carrying with them a large, sea-stained crate bound in iron and marked with a single sigil, a trident inside a sunwheel. SS General Wolfram Kruger, the head of the mission, delivered the contents directly to Weilsburg Castle under heavy guard. What lay inside was not gold, nor weaponry, but a slab of smooth obsidian etched with spirals, circles, and faintly glowing runes no scholar could decode. Accompanying it were dozens of scrolls and diagrams allegedly copied from cave murals in a submerged chamber beneath the island. The Nazis named it Die Atlantis Protocol. Kruger believed it to be evidence of an ancient, pre-Aryan race capable of manipulating energy in ways modern physics could not explain. What followed were whispers of strange experiments. Several SS scientists assigned to the project began reporting symptoms of hallucinations and time loss. Some spoke of dreams in languages they didn't understand. One man claimed the obsidian slab sang when touched. Within a month, 3 researchers had died, one by suicide, another from unexplained internal bleeding, and a third simply vanished during a routine test. Despite these incidents, Himmler insisted the work continue. He believed the protocol held the key to a new energy source, one that would power the Third Reich's secret Wunderwaffe projects. A separate lab, codenamed Nachtvogel, was established deep beneath the Harz Mountains to continue the study away from prying eyes. Only a handful of officers knew of its existence. In spring 1942, a British intelligence cell operating out of Istanbul intercepted a series of coded messages referring to a black cube, magnetic resonance distortions, and a term their linguists translated as Geistfeld, ghost field. MI6 launched an immediate investigation. The decrypted documents suggested that the Nazis had activated the artifact and were attempting to channel its properties into a new form of propulsion. Allied analysts speculated it was related to the rumored Nazi Bell device, though no connection was confirmed. Then, without warning, the communications stopped. Satellite overflights detected a sudden and massive electrical discharge over the Nachtvogel region, strong enough to temporarily blind Allied radio in North Africa. The blackout lasted 2 hours. When British agents later bribed a German field scientist for information, he whispered only one phrase before disappearing into a crowd. It broke the air. By late 1943, the Nazi leadership had become divided over the protocol. Some believed it was cursed. Kruger, who had been awarded the Knight's Cross, began exhibiting signs of dementia, often speaking to walls and tracing the slab symbols on his arms with ink. In a final message to Himmler, he claimed the artifact was not from this world, nor from our time. A week later, he locked himself inside the main chamber and set it on fire. His body was never recovered. The slab itself was said to have survived. Desperate to erase the failure, the SS ordered all files, personnel, and research related to the Atlantis Protocol destroyed. But not all of it vanished. In April 1945, as American forces pushed through southern Germany, a small unit stumbled upon a convoy of burned-out vehicles near Bad Reichenhall. Inside, they found charred documents stamped with a Nachtvogel insignia, and in one steel box, half melted by heat, a piece of black stone, smooth and humming faintly. The artifact was quietly moved to London and hidden within MI6's deep archives under Churchill's direct orders. No official statement was ever made, and most involved in the discovery died under mysterious circumstances in the decades that followed. Today, only fragments of the protocol remain, some scribbled diagrams, a few photographs blurred by radiation damage, and one survivor's journal claiming the slab opened doors in the mind, and something looked back. In the biting winter of 1942, a British reconnaissance plane flying low over the Arctic waters near Narvik, Norway, spotted an unusual sight: a fully armed German naval convoy drifting silently through thick ice fog, completely off radar and unannounced by any known communication. The pilot, Flight Officer James Hall, noted the odd formation: 6 supply ships, 3 destroyers, and a lead cruiser flying an unfamiliar variant of the Kriegsmarine flag, blood red, with a double-headed eagle wrapped around a broken compass. Hall reported the sighting immediately, but when Allied naval forces arrived just hours later, there was nothing. No ships, no wreckage. Just ice and mist. British High Command dismissed it as a mistake, perhaps a mirage caused by atmospheric distortion. But Hall was insistent. He had photos. Blurry, distorted by moisture, but clearly showing vessels that shouldn't have been there. What's more, he claimed to have seen no crew aboard any of the ships. 3 weeks later, the fishing village of Skjomenfjord, just south of Narvik, found itself the center of a mystery. Locals discovered 2 lifeboats washed ashore, frozen solid. Inside were the corpses of 12 German sailors, but their uniforms bore division insignias never seen before. Each man's face was contorted in terror. Their skin was pale blue, their eyes frozen open. Stranger still, none of the bodies had any wounds, and the insides of their mouths were filled with ash. Norwegian authorities contacted Allied intelligence. The response was swift and secretive. A special Royal Navy detachment arrived, sealed off the village, and collected everything: the lifeboats, the uniforms, even the sand beneath them. In declassified documents, the operation was referred to only as Cold Whisper. Back in London, the recovered uniforms and documents revealed references to Project Nebel, a Nazi program believed to have been initiated by a radical cell within the SS focused on extreme environmental conditioning. The idea was to create soldiers capable of surviving and fighting in sub-zero Arctic conditions for weeks without food or sleep. But the documents also hinted at something far more disturbing: sensory isolation chambers, auditory deprivation, prolonged light starvation, psychological manipulation bordering on torture. One journal entry read, "They are no longer men. They listen only to the silence." Meanwhile, local legends in Narvik began to resurface. Old fishermen spoke of ghost ships that prowled the Arctic fog during the long polar nights. They told stories of crews who sailed north and never returned, their souls frozen between this world and the next. In those villages, sightings of unnatural lights on the horizon surged after 1942. In January 1943, the British Navy reported another contact. HMS Drakeheart, patrolling near the Lofoten Islands, intercepted what it described as an abandoned cruiser adrift in the fog. The boarding party found the ship's decks coated in a thin layer of frost. No crew. No sounds. No heat. All systems were dead except a single radio that emitted a constant low-frequency hum, a frequency later discovered to match the exact auditory tone used in Project Nebel's sensory trials. The ship was rigged for tow, but as the sun began to rise, a strange sequence occurred. The metal began to groan. Ice formed on the ropes and then, with an explosive crack, the cruiser broke apart, not from outside force, but seemingly from internal collapse. It sank within minutes, taking with it the equipment and 3 British sailors who had gone below deck. Survivors from the Drakeheart were interviewed repeatedly. Some could no longer sleep. Others claimed to hear faint whispers when alone. One man, a radio technician, attempted suicide weeks later, leaving behind a note that simply read, "The fog remembers." The British buried the entire incident under layers of secrecy, but not before whispers of the ghost convoy reached American intelligence. OSS reports from the time reference a theoretical weapon under development by the Germans. Not a bomb, but a psychological field generator that could disorient and control human perception. The idea was to make the enemy see what wasn't there, or fail to see what was. In 1967, a declassified MI6 briefing acknowledged that no physical evidence of Project Nebel survived past 1945, and that all documentation regarding the Ghost Convoy was likely destroyed in a fire at the Langley archives. But conspiracy theorists note that several former SS scientists tied to the program were quietly relocated to Soviet territory in the closing months of the war. Today, in the frozen fjords of Narvik, the locals still avoid going out when the fog rolls in too thick. Some fishermen swear they still hear horns echoing from deep within the ice mist. And if you ask them about the convoy, they'll tell you what their grandfathers did. Asterisk, don't follow the lights. They're not from here. Asterisk. In the winter of 1943, a man approached Winston Churchill's motorcade as it traveled through a heavily guarded London borough. He did not carry a weapon, did not shout, and made no sudden movement. Instead, he calmly held up a small leather-bound notebook and walked toward the Prime Minister's car. He was tackled within seconds, but not before Churchill caught a glimpse of the notebook's cover, a strange, concentric spiral drawn in ink so dark it shimmered under the street lamp. The man was interrogated for 3 days before British intelligence classified the case under Level 6 clearance. No prints. No identification. He spoke fluent German and English but claimed no memory of how he crossed into British territory. All he remembered was a name, Raven's Eye. Behind closed doors, MI6 began unraveling the strangest assassination plot of the war, one with no bullet, no poison, no bomb. The weapon was an idea. Documents found in the man's notebook included pages of fractal-like patterns, sigils, and what appeared to be schematics for sonic emitters. One page, labeled Stimmy Gots, the Voice of God, detailed a formula for manipulating human thought through low-frequency vibrations, paired with repeated geometric stimuli. MI6's Occult Research Division, codenamed the Black Cabinet, confirmed the symbols were nearly identical to ancient Mesopotamian trance diagrams, later studied by German occultists in the 1930s. It all pointed to a top-secret Nazi experiment hidden deep in the forests of Thuringia, Operation Rabenage, or Raven's Eye. The project, authorized by Heinrich Himmler himself, was led by SS psychiatrist Dr. Karl Reimann, a man obsessed with cognitive control, hypnosis, and breaking the human will. According to defectors, Reimann's goal was nothing short of total neurological domination. Using rhythmic light patterns, vibrational frequencies, and psychological triggers buried in language and imagery, he believed he could implant suggestions into any human mind, turning soldiers, civilians, even leaders, into unwitting agents of Nazi command. Not brainwashing in the traditional sense, but literal thought implantation. What disturbed the British the most was the method of delivery. Reimann's research suggested that direct contact wasn't necessary. Exposure to modified symbols, repetitive soundscapes, or specific phrasing spoken in a low tone could begin the conditioning process within hours. One decrypted German file suggested the technology was tested on a French POW camp. Days after exposure, 2 prisoners stabbed a British officer during a routine inspection, with no recollection afterward. The man who approached Churchill may have been one of them. But Raven's Eye wasn't confined to theory. MI6 discovered that Reimann had developed a prototype device called the Flustermaskin, the Whisper Machine, a mobile broadcaster no larger than a phonograph, capable of emitting infrasonic tones laced with suggestion patterns. It was reportedly used in field trials in the Balkans, where several partisan cells self-destructed due to sudden internal betrayals. Churchill, disturbed by the implications, ordered a full-scale hunt for the Raven's Eye facility. In May 1943, an SAS strike team was deployed behind enemy lines. Their mission: infiltrate the Schwarzkapelle, a complex buried under the Thuringian woods, disguised as a mining facility. The team's final radio transmission was chilling. We've breached the outer gate. Symbols everywhere. Static in the air. It's like the walls are humming. Then silence. Weeks later, only 1 soldier was recovered. He had walked into an Allied camp in a daze, barefoot, repeating a phrase in broken German. Asterisk, I hear him thinking. Asterisk, he died 2 days later of unexplained brain hemorrhaging. MI6 concluded that the Schwarzkapelle was destroyed by the Germans themselves once they realized the technology had spiraled out of control. But rumors persisted that Ryman had escaped, taking the Whisper machine and its designs with him. After the war, Soviet and American intelligence both launched covert operations to locate Raven's eye survivors. Some believe the Whisper machine was split into components and hidden in multiple countries. Others claim Ryman was absorbed into early Soviet mind control programs. In the 1960s, the CIA's MK-Ultra files contained several pages redacted under a title that simply read, "Transferred from Raven's Eye." When pressed in Parliament in 1972, MI6 declined to confirm the project ever existed. The notebook recovered in Churchill's incident was sealed away. Its cover, that spiral, became the unofficial emblem of the Black Cabinet, which quietly disbanded in 1951. Today, no physical evidence of the Flustermaskin has been found. But every so often, stories emerge. Stories of a strange low hum heard near old Nazi bunkers. Of symbols that cause seizures in sensitive minds. Of voices that speak just below hearing, and say things no one remembers learning. In the final, desperate stages of the Pacific War, Allied intelligence began intercepting faint radio transmissions from an uncharted island between Okinawa and the Marianas. The broadcasts were filled with distorted Japanese, technical jargon, and what sounded like screaming beneath static. The source was quickly triangulated to a location not found on any official map, an isle surrounded by volcanic ridges and treacherous currents. It was labeled only as 707 in decrypted Japanese naval records. Unit 707 had never appeared in any known records of Japan's military structure. But OSS analysts quickly recognized the number's significance. The infamous Unit 731, Japan's biological warfare division in Manchuria, was a war crime in motion, known for inhumane experiments on civilians. Could 707 be a maritime equivalent? And if so, what were they doing in the Pacific's shadow? In August 1945, days before the surrender, a U.S. submarine was dispatched to investigate. The recon team, consisting of Marines and medical officers, landed on the island under the cover of night. What they found was a fortress carved directly into black volcanic rock, with gates bearing symbols in both Japanese kanji and German Gothic script. The facility had clearly been constructed with help from the Reich, reinforced bunkers, V-2 rocket shells, and crates stamped with the eagle and swastika. Inside, the scene was something from a nightmare. Surgical theaters lay abandoned, many still soaked in blood. Cages filled with mutated rodents and dogs lined the lower chambers. In one room, human bones were stacked like firewood. All documents were half-burned, and most of the electrical systems had been sabotaged. But in a steel vault at the center of the compound, the Marines discovered a set of reels and photographs, marked WWII protocols. The images were horrific. Test subjects exposed to airborne toxins while wearing experimental gear that fused Japanese and German tech. Diagrams illustrated procedures for grafting foreign organs into live hosts. One report described neuroresonance interrogation, a method that involved flooding prisoners with specific sound waves to extract memory fragments while keeping them conscious. But perhaps the most disturbing find was a reference to the mirror room. According to scattered notes, the mirror room was a cylindrical chamber lined with reflective metals sourced from a meteorite. Japanese scientists, working with remnants of Nazi occult engineers, believed they could harness memory echoes, spiritual or psychic remnants, from human suffering. The chamber was meant to act as an amplifier, recording intense human trauma and converting it into usable energy. The theory was pure madness, yet photographs showed clear signs of test subjects inside the chamber, bound to the walls, their eyes gouged out, as if to keep them from seeing something. Before the Marines could finish cataloging the facility, tremors began. The island had been rigged to collapse. Explosives planted along the volcanic fault lines detonated in sequence. Half the recon team was lost. The surviving files were evacuated by air just hours before 707 was consumed by smoke and sea, disappearing forever beneath boiling waves. Upon review, U.S. intelligence decided the truth was too dangerous. The existence of Unit 707 was denied, the surviving Marines reassigned, and the recovered WWII protocols buried under what would later become Project Stargate, the CIA's attempt at psychic warfare during the Cold War. Over the next 2 decades, whispers of the island resurfaced. Japanese fishermen spoke of strange debris washing up on nearby shores, bits of metal that made compasses spin and animals bark in fear. In 1971, a typhoon briefly revealed part of the island's western cliffs again, and an Australian research vessel recorded unexplained sonar readings from the depths. But then it vanished again, swallowed by the sea and forgotten by all but a few. Some believe that remnants of Unit 707 were rescued before the blast, and that their knowledge lives on in dark corners of classified programs. Others think the mirror room still exists, buried under the ash and pressure of the ocean, humming quietly as it absorbs the echoes of war. A weapon not of metal, nor of fire, but of memory. April 1945. The Reich was crumbling. Soviet artillery pounded Berlin from the east as the Western Allies closed in from the west. Inside the heart of the city, chaos reigned. But beneath the ruins of an old cathedral in Mitte, a place long abandoned and forgotten, something darker was unfolding. The structure had once been a medieval church, burned during the 30 Years' War and rebuilt by Prussian mystics in the 1800s. In early 1945, a splinter group of SS officers, cultists within the Ahnenerbe, seized it and renamed it Der Dritte Tempel, the Third Temple. Led by Standartenführer Otto von Richter, they were not loyal to Hitler in the traditional sense. Their allegiance was to something far older, something they claimed whispered to them in dreams, buried deep beneath Berlin. Von Richter believed that the fall of the Reich was prophesied, not as a defeat, but as a ritual offering. The blood of millions, he wrote, would unlock the gates. The Third Temple was to be the final altar. In the temple's crypts, Soviet soldiers later discovered walls etched with runes and Hebrew mysticism fused with Nazi symbolism. There were diagrams of stars, concentric circles, and mathematical formulas referencing energy convergence, celestial alignments, and the awakening of the bloodstone. One phrase appeared again and again: Der Erste stirbt, damit der Letzte lebt. The first must die, so the last may live. According to captured witnesses, von Richter had assembled 44 high-ranking SS and Gestapo officers inside the temple during the final days. Among them were rumored members of Hitler's inner circle, men who disappeared from public record without a trace. They brought relics with them: the Spear of Destiny, supposedly seized from Vienna, ancient scrolls from Tibet, bones marked as having been taken from the Warsaw Ghetto, and an item known only as Der Schreiende Stein, the Screaming Stone. Locals claimed they heard chanting through the rubble, a guttural rhythm that seemed to pulse through the air. Others swore they saw light erupting from the ground during the final bombardment, a white glow that left shadows permanently scorched into nearby walls. And then, silence. When Soviet forces finally overran the area, they found the temple in ruins. But something was wrong. The structure had collapsed inward, not from shelling, but as if sucked into itself. The crypt was sealed with an iron gate fused by unnatural heat. The bodies they did recover, scattered along the stairwells and hallways, showed signs of massive blood loss, yet no visible wounds. Their eyes were burned black. In the temple's inner chamber, the Red Army discovered the altar. It was made of bone, human, mostly, and surrounded by concentric circles of melted gold. On the wall above it, scorched into stone, was a phrase in Latin: Et hic incipit tertium regnum, and here begins the Third Kingdom. Most of what was found in the Third Temple was classified by Soviet intelligence and sent to Moscow. Rumors of what they uncovered: a preserved scroll sealed in wax, a shard of what appeared to be meteoric iron inscribed with Babylonian cuneiform, leaked years later through defectors. One such defector claimed the scroll referenced the return of the first architect, and instructions on how to bring him through the veil. After the war, von Richter's name was erased from history. Officially, he died in the Battle of Berlin. But his name appeared decades later in a CIA field report from Argentina, tied to a network of former SS operating under a cult known as Die Letzten Wachter, the Last Watchers. By the 1980s, the site of the Third Temple had been paved over and built into an apartment block. But strange reports persisted. Tenants complained of sleepwalking, nosebleeds, and night terrors. One man claimed his child spoke fluent Aramaic in her sleep. Excavation crews found bones each time a new foundation was dug. Eventually, the building was condemned. Today, the entrance to the crypt is sealed. There is no plaque, no memorial. Only concrete and silence. Yet, in classified files and forbidden books, whispers of the Third Temple remain, the place where the Reich was not defeated, but offered. And what, if anything, accepted that offer, remains unknown. Some stories end with surrender. These never ended at all. From mind control experiments to temples built in blood, what we uncovered may just be the edge of something deeper, something still alive beneath governments, beneath memory. The question isn't whether it happened. The question is, how much more did they hide? Because if these 5 were buried, how many more remain in the dark, waiting to be opened?